P. Diddy makes a third attempt to be released on bail, and this time it could actually happen. A new U.S. District Court judge has been appointed to the case, and now it's going to be up to him whether Diddy is released. Meanwhile, he's still behind bars in a Brooklyn jail that, according to his attorneys, has deplorable conditions.
Reports coming out right now say Diddy has officially reached his breaking point inside prison. After weeks of trying to hold it together, sources are saying he's completely fallen apart, and his legal team just filed an emotional appeal claiming he
Taking a closer look at Diddy's day-to-day life incarcerated and his road to a possible release with attorney Randy Kessler. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. 54-year-old Sean P. Diddy Combs is entering his fourth week behind bars, being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. It's a far cry from his lavish life and mansions in Miami and Los Angeles, but ironically, it was the evidence collected at those mansions that put Diddy in jail in the first place. Back in March, federal investigators raided Diddy's homes in Florida and California, collecting evidence in the federal case against him. We now have a better idea about what investigators were collecting, including multiple AR-15 rifles with the serial numbers removed, a drum magazine, and illegal drugs. But Diddy doesn't face any charges for possession of those items. Instead, it was the electronic evidence that led to Diddy's charges. On September 16th, he was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. A main topic discussed in this indictment was freak-offs, described as elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. And the government alleges these freak-offs were not consensual. The indictment lays out a pattern of abuse that Diddy would often follow, drugging or forcing the victims to drink alcohol that was oftentimes laced with something, sexually assaulting these victims, and then forcing them to have sex with a prostitute. Now, the feds say they have evidence of these freak-offs because Diddy often recorded them. Investigators apparently have dozens of freak-off videos and collected more than 100 cell phones, laptops, cloud storage accounts, and storage devices. They allege Diddy used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during the freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. So these same recordings that were once used to keep victims quiet are now being used to prosecute Diddy in a sex trafficking scheme that goes back decades. The allegations against Diddy go back a while too, with survivors reporting abuse as far back as 1991. Last November, Cassandra Ventura, Diddy's ex, filed civil suit against him, citing years of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse during their relationship. Cassie mentioned the freak-offs, saying Diddy recorded them and used them to keep her quiet. After that, a dozen more civil suits were filed against Diddy, and they all followed the same pattern, alleging he drugged the victims, assaulted them, and recorded it. These lawsuits paved the way for Diddy's indictment and arrest, and there's actually more on the way. Weeks after Diddy's arrest, Houston-based attorney Tony Busby revealed he's planning to file 120 new civil lawsuits against Diddy with even more shocking allegations. These lawsuits will apparently include allegations of child sex abuse too. In one case, a kid as young as 9 years old. The lawsuits are also expected to reveal at least one high-profile name that was involved in Diddy's scheme and his mom, his 3 adult sons, and the mothers of 2 of his children. The defense also suggested Diddy would have major restrictions on travel, a GPS monitor, and even limitations on female visitors. This was presented to Judge Andrew L. Carter, who denied Diddy's bid for release. He argued the bail package was insufficient to guarantee the safety of the community or to maintain the integrity of the case. Before that, Magistrate Judge Robin Tarnowski also denied Diddy bail, highlighting his apparent anger issues and history of substance abuse. She also voiced concern about a danger to the community or witness tampering should Diddy be released. But just this week, Judge Arun Subramanian was assigned to Diddy's case. Subramanian was nominated by President Joe Biden in 2022 and took the bench in 2023. Before that, he was a law
can't survive another day behind bars. What's happening to him inside is pushing him past every limit. And people who've seen him recently are saying it's shocking to witness. According to insiders, Diddy's not the same man who walked into prison just weeks ago. The confidence, the arrogance, the swagger, all gone. What's left is someone broken, terrified, and desperate. He's barely sleeping, barely eating, and reportedly crying through most of his nights. People inside are saying he's having emotional breakdowns almost daily, pacing back and forth in his cell, muttering to himself, and begging guards to move him. The isolation, the constant fear, and the complete loss of control have pushed him to the edge. His legal team has now filed what they're calling an emergency emotional appeal, saying the conditions of his confinement are literally destroying him. They claim his mental health has deteriorated to the point where keeping him inside could be life-threatening. The documents reportedly describe his current state as unstable, unsafe, and deeply traumatized. They're not just asking for leniency, they're pleading for mercy. People close to the situation are saying Diddy spends most of his time alone in protection.
Clerk for Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Subramanian's no stranger to high-profile cases either. He's also overseeing the Department of Justice antitrust case against Ticketmaster. That's the case where the government alleges Ticketmaster has an unlawful monopoly on the market. That really came to light after the site crashed in 2022 when Taylor Swift fans rushed to get concert tickets. But back to P. Diddy. His team will make a third bid for release, this time to Judge Subramanian. In the meantime, he's still behind bars at MDC Brooklyn, and according to Diddy's legal team, the jail is notoriously dangerous and rundown. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, argues there are major issues with the jail, citing violence, poor conditions, overcrowding, and even staffing issues. He also cited some startling statistics. 2 inmates have been killed at MDC since June, and at least 4 inmates have died by suicide over the past 3 years. On top of that, 6 staff members have been charged with crimes over the past 5 years. When Diddy was first arrested, he was placed on suicide watch, which according to the DOJ's National Institute of Corrections is, quote, supervisory precautions taken for suicidal inmates that require frequent observation. Diddy's since been taken off suicide watch, but is still being housed in a protective care unit. Actually, the same one as Sam Bankman-Fried. Bankman-Fried was convicted of fraud and money laundering last November after the collapse of his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. They're both in a separate section of MDC. That's a unit for inmates who require special protection. That's people like Diddy or Bankman-Fried who are high-profile inmates, but it also cares for other inmates who need protection as they assist in ongoing investigations in open cases. Now, according to some reports, Diddy has a few privileges that other inmates lack, including access to daily showers and slightly better food. In his nearly month-long stay at MDC, Diddy has had phone conversations with his children and even an in-person visit from his family. To take a deeper dive into Diddy's life behind bars and the likelihood that he'll soon be released, we're sitting down with attorney Randy Kessler. I mean, P. Diddy has been in the spotlight for decades. He's obviously got a pretty big bank account, living in mansions in multiple cities, and that's what he's used to. And all of a sudden, he's in a prison that's being described as deplorable. I mean, just that unto itself, is that a major change?
Of course, the bigger they come, the harder they fall. And I sort of think that's what the prurient interest of the public is. Jail is terrible for anybody, but for someone who's used to having people wait on them hand and foot and never stands in line and always, gets front row and gets the best table and gets to have the exact opposite, what a life-changing moment. I mean, it's just incredible. And, it brings into context our whole system of innocent till proven guilty. Why is he not being given bond? And, we could debate that all day long. Of all people that's unlikely to flee or get away, well, he's got the resources to flee, but he's so recognizable. And isn't he innocent till proven guilty? Well, yeah, but, we have to recognize there are degrees of innocent till proven guilty. When you have this much evidence and so much stuff out there, does that affect the judge's decision whether to grant bond or not? And you can't think as a human being the judge isn't thinking that some people are more likely to be guilty than others. But the system says you're innocent until proven guilty, and it's sort of a shame that he's in jail. And what if he's vindicated? What if he's acquitted? Then how do you ever give him back?
Of custody. He was placed there after several threats from inmates and at least one reported altercation that left him shaken. Sources say since that incident, he's been paranoid, convinced someone is going to come for him again. He's constantly requesting transfers, saying he can't breathe properly in his cell, that the walls are closing in on him. Guards have even had to intervene multiple times when he's reportedly been found sitting on the floor in tears, saying he can't do it anymore. It's a shocking fall for someone who built his entire life on control and power. This is a man who was used to snapping his fingers and having entire teams move for him. Now, he's just another inmate, waiting for guards to decide when he eats, when he sleeps, when he can speak, and that loss of control has broken him. Insiders say the look in his eyes tells the whole story: fear, regret, and disbelief. He can't believe this is his life now. His lawyers are trying to use that emotional collapse to their advantage. The appeal they filed isn't just about legal grounds.
Those few months of incarceration, just a lot of things going on here.
Let's talk about that bail because it was denied twice. So Diddy has been in jail for almost a month now at this point, 3 to 4 weeks. That's quite a long time and quite a far cry from what he's used to. But that bail denial, both of the judges mentioned that he has some major resources, that he could flee because he has the money, access to private jets, things like that. Do you think that's a valid argument that these judges are making, that he could just flee and run away?
I mean, it's a legitimate concern. No judge wants to wake up and read the headlines the next day. Oh, they treated this guy special and they gave him bond, and now he's gone and he fled from justice. So that's what's in the back of most judges' minds. On the other hand, we deal with cases where clients have significant funds sometimes, and sometimes where there's money, you can craft a unique solution. Years ago it was the ankle bracelet and the ankle monitor, that if you had money to afford $250 a month for the process and the technical details, you could do that. And I can't imagine there wasn't some extreme, unique situation where they could pay for private security guards to monitor, to report. It's just interesting to me that with all the money he has and all the resources he has, they couldn't craft some solution that lets him be under some form of house arrest. And again, it sounds like special treatment, but the truth of the matter is, to incarcerate somebody like him is expensive to all of us. We're taxpayers, and he's got to have unique situations. You can't put him in general population where, everyone wants a piece of him and everyone wants to be his friend and everyone. So maybe some solution where his money could help us craft. I mean, he could build his separate jail cell, and we could keep him there. Just interesting to me that they sort of said, nope, you're going to be treated not like everybody else, but a lot like everybody else. Having money doesn't do it. So I wouldn't want to be those judges. There's sort of a no-win situation for the judge. And it sounds like they're erring on the side of caution. We're going to do what we would do for anybody else, which is keep him incarcerated for fear he flees. And then it's on us. This guilty person or this potentially guilty person gets to go on and live their life because the judge let them have bond. It flips from he's the bad person to now the judge made a mistake. That's what judges don't want.
Just to play devil's advocate for a second, if we're going back in the timeline of Diddy, there were federal raids performed on his home back in March. So obviously he knew about it then. He could infer, okay, they're going to investigate something. And speaking with his legal team, he again could infer charges could be coming down the line. So if Diddy was going to run, he had all the time in the world, 6 months between those raids and then when he was indicted, to run. I mean, is that something that his defense could highlight and say, hey, he could have left but didn't?
I think you should practice law because that's an excellent argument. I think it's a 100% correct argument, which is he had the opportunity to flee, except that sometimes people don't think rationally. Some people that are in power often think, I can get away with this, I can get away with this. And then when they finally realize they can't get away with it is when they try to look at other options. So yes, it's a good argument that he had all the time in the world to try to get away. If he knew this was coming, he should have seen it, and he didn't run. That's taking the approach that we're going to trust people. And unfortunately, not everybody trusts people, and he's going to be locked up until they decide on whether he's guilty or innocent or takes a plea. But yes, that's the argument I'd be making if I was his defense lawyer. What are you afraid of? He could have left.
Anymore. It's about human survival. They're saying his emotional state is so fragile that continued incarceration could lead to a full psychological breakdown. They've reportedly attached medical evaluations, notes from mental health professionals, and sworn statements describing his current condition. It's not a strategy built on defiance, it's built on desperation. One insider who has been in contact with his legal team said, he's not acting tough anymore. He's begging. Every call, every message. It's the same thing. Get me out of here, please. He's terrified, and he's falling apart. Prison officials haven't commented directly on the situation, but reports from inside suggest he's under constant supervision. Guards are checking on him every hour, worried that he might hurt himself or spiral into a complete mental collapse. The stress, the fear, the humiliation, it's all too much. People who've seen him say he looks hollow, lost, and disconnected. The man who once filled rooms with energy and power now barely speaks above a whisper. And it's not just the environment, it's the whispers.
Left 100 times, and he didn't. and he will give you any safeguards you want, and he'll pay for the safeguards. Even though he shouldn't have to, he'll pay whatever it takes so that he doesn't have to be in jail because he's innocent right now.
His defense team did bring a interesting bail package, kind of what you're talking about, a GPS monitor so that people could know where he was, a restriction on the people who could come visit him, specifically women. A lot of people were going to co-sign on this, and it was going to be $50 million. And this was denied 2 times. But now there may be a win for Diddy, potentially, that a new judge has been assigned to the case. Do you think it's possible now that this new judge reconsiders and takes the defense up on this giant bail package?
Well, Sierra, anything's possible, right? But now this judge has an even harder time, I think, because the past judge locked him up, didn't let him out, and he's still there available for trial. If the new judge lets him out on bond and something goes wrong, and this isn't the analysis that I'm proud to make, right? We shouldn't be saying, well, judges are worried about their own skin and how they look if something bad happens. And maybe this new judge has a broader view and says, you know what? If he's willing to part, and again, I don't think the money's the issue. $50 million is a high bond, but it's not a question of how bad was the crime. The bond issue is, what is the likelihood that this person would avoid trial and skip town and forfeit their bond? Most people would rather go to trial than give up $100,000. But he apparently has the money and the wherewithal to say, if there's a chance I'm going to jail for the rest of my life, if they can keep the $50 million, I'm going to some country where they can't extradite me. So the amount of money is really not as telling as the fact that all these other accommodations, they can't find one that secures the judge in his mind or her mind that, okay, he's not going to be able to leave town with those restrictions in place. I'm comfortable. But, at least the lawyers know what's been turned down before, and they're getting another crack at it. You never know.
So we talked about the potential for bail, and we'll see if this new judge actually allows that. But for now, Diddy is behind bars at MDC, this Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. And his team has brought up some concerns about this place. I mean, by all accounts, it's not a great place to be. Not that any jail is, but the conditions sound a little bit worse than maybe other jails out there. Do you think if he isn't granted bail, his team could still say, hey, let's transfer him to a new one ahead of the trial?
They're going to try everything. They're going to try to transfer him. They're going to try to get him out. In a normal case where it's a high profile person or a well-funded person, the prosecution and the judge is a little bit more concerned about a wrongful prosecution, because people that are mad that they're being arrested for a crime they didn't commit can turn around and file for malicious prosecution. It sounds like there's enough evidence there that they can argue with a straight face that we had a basis to go forward, right? There's so many people coming out of the woodwork that no one's going to say that they were malicious about this. They went after him without any evidence, without any basis for it whatsoever. But certainly there are things that can be done, but the truth is every jail is bad and some jails are worse than others. And the problem, again, is if you move him, why is he getting special treatment? And maybe he's earned special treatment. Maybe what he's done, maybe he's given so much back to his fans and to the world and to charity that maybe there's a way that it plays out in the end. But again, to go into court and say this jail is bad, move him to another jail is not your first argument. That's sort of everything else failed. Judge, let me at least earn my keep and get something better for my client than this horrible place that he's in. And they are going to be saying it over and over and over. Innocent till proven guilty. You're putting an innocent man not just in jail.
Stairs. The tension. Inmates don't see him as a superstar. They see him as a symbol, someone who once thought he was untouchable, now just another man trapped behind the same bars. That kind of fall hits harder than anything else. Some reports claim Diddy has even started refusing visits. He doesn't want anyone, not his lawyers, not his family, to see him like this. The shame has become unbearable. He's reportedly told his legal team, I can't let them see me broken. I can't let them see me like this. It's a haunting statement from someone who once lived for being seen. The emotional appeal his lawyers filed might be his last hope. They're arguing that his fame, the nature of his charges, and his current mental state make him a high-risk inmate, not just for violence from others, but for his own well-being. They're pushing for a transfer, or even a temporary release under medical supervision. They're painting a picture of a man who's not just struggling, but barely surviving. The public reaction has been divided, as
for a sustained period of time. Until he changes his message, more problems are going to follow.
And Diddy allegedly has been accused of using different drugs in the past. Even prosecutors have said on the night he was arrested that there was allegedly pink cocaine in his hotel room. Do you think that there's any chance he could be going through withdrawals during his adjustment behind bars right now?
There's no question. People who know they're going to prison who have been on medications, either illegal or illegal, it would be wise to understand the Bureau of Prisons might not prescribe you what you like. And if you're taking illegal drugs, unless you're engaging in the prison hustle, you're not going to get it. It would be easier to get the drugs and engage in the prison hustle in general population, but not when you're on lockdown for 23 hours a day. So certainly it is a brutal adjustment if you are on no drugs, but certainly if you are withdrawing, isolated 23 hours a day without getting things that you can get the snap of a finger, it makes the decision or the process that much harder, which is why I can assure you, based on what happened with Epstein, the high profile nature of the failures of this prison in the past, including some judges not even sending prisoners there because they were so concerned about their safety, you can expect staff is watching him, not 22, 23, 24 hours a day. They do not want more problems.
And this is a man going from private chefs and food from across the world to a set menu, just like any other detainee or inmate. What can you tell us about the food and the commissary in a place like the Federal Detention Center in Brooklyn?
It's a difference. That much I can tell you. You're going to have a lot of starchy food, cereals. If you get any vegetables at all, they're old, so to speak. They are not fresh. Same fruits and vegetables, no good. A lot of processed food, some rice and beans and muffins and things that generally most people don't like to eat. It's not terribly healthy. And again, the government would say that is a consequence of this process. So certainly it is an adjustment. Most people will lose weight. And it's hard because he can't even really exercise in this environment. There's no outdoor, like I've said before, it's not one of these camps where you can walk around a track. Even in a high security penitentiary like Atlanta, there's going to be a track and outdoors. When you're in a detention center, locked down 23 hours a day, not eating healthy foods or getting your medications, it could test even the strongest person. And again, that's what I would say to him. Your family is watching. There are people, so many are critical of him, I understand, but there are also those that love and support him who are watching. So as crazy as it sounds to some, and I've been called crazy, it's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, to express to his family, others have gone through misery and struggle. They have emerged strong with dignity, with a plan. And as I said earlier, once he embraces a better message that it's not about him and how miserable his living situation is, but rather people he might have hurt, that's when he can get on the right side and get towards eventually getting out of there, and also a shorter sentence with better messaging.
And his lawyers did fight unsuccessfully this week to get him out on that bail package. Do you think in his mind, him being Diddy, that he really just didn't believe he would end up in jail where he has to remain now until trial?
There's no question. He presumed because it would be very difficult for someone like to be a flight risk. Okay, so you figure I'm selling the jet. Here are the keys to the jet. Here's the collateral to my $50 million mansion in Florida. I am flying to New York on my own accord. I will turn myself in. So you rationalize or convince yourself I'm so high profile in public and I'm going there on my own. They're not going to take me in. But we know the government likes to make examples out of people, and the government's doing a good job here. They're focusing what too many people tend to forget about, the victims. So while it's difficult for Diddy, I know, to be confined in a cell for 23 hours a day, it might not be as hard as the victims they allege he created. Let's focus on them. Let's put them first. And if he can begin to do that, he's going to get more of what he wants, freedom and potentially bond.
As always, some people are saying this is karma, that after everything Diddy's been accused of, this is the consequence he's been running from. Others say no human deserves this level of torment, that even the worst deserve basic dignity. But no matter which side you're on, everyone can agree on one thing: this is the lowest point of his entire life. Sources close to him say that he's starting to realize that fame can't save him anymore. The calls, the connections, the influence, none of it matters in there. He's not Diddy in that cell. He's just another number. And that's what's breaking him the most. Even some of his closest allies outside are beginning to distance themselves. People who once defended him publicly are now going quiet. The empire he built on power, image, and fear is crumbling faster than anyone could have predicted. And inside those prison walls, Diddy's realizing what happens when all that's left is himself, and he can't handle it. The emotional appeal has yet to be ruled on, but experts say it's an uphill battle. The court has to be convinced that his mental and emotional suffering.
But certainly, if I were a betting person, I would have bet that he was going to walk out of there into his mansion on 24 hours a day lockdown, even with security guards outside the house. He's not going anywhere, but at least he's in the mansion.
And going from mega millions of dollars, a huge mansions, private jet, to a jail cell that's reportedly plagued with issues at the detention center, which is not uncommon for a lot of jails and prisons across the United States. But do you believe that his life could be in danger if he's ever released into the general population?
I don't think, at least for quite some time, if convicted, that he'll be released to the general population. There are prisoners who like headlines, who loathe sex offenders, who might loathe him as a celebrity. The Bureau of Prisons cannot have any problems at this time. So if he's ever in general population, it will be quite some time. By then, we'll have forgotten about this case. As we love stardom, eventually we're going to forget about this case and move on to something else. It will be quite some time. And that's a consequence of his celebrity. Rather than being around people and communicating and being in that general population, he is totally isolated, which can really test his resolve. I have no doubt his family, his friends, those who love and support him are worried about him. And I encourage him to respond as best as he properly can. But he has a difficult road ahead of him.
And someone who is worth hundreds of millions, even a reported $1 billion before, do you think it'll present any type of problem that he could end up getting any type of special treatment?
Certainly, there could be staff who admire him, sycophants who want to kiss up to him in predictable fashion because he's a celebrity. There will be some prisoners totally enamored by him. Some won't care. So you could expect at some point prisoners could offer, it could be drugs. We see iPhones that are very pervasive inside of these prisons. It's been a huge problem for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it's also going to ensure that he doesn't, Oscar Wilde said he could resist anything but temptation. If there's temptation presented to him and he gives in, what does that do? It could exacerbate his struggles because the government can say he can't even control himself in a lockdown environment. That's why he's not free, Your Honor. So temptations eventually will make its way to him, potentially from staff and prisoners. And if he cares most about his family and getting the best outcome possible, it's going to require him to say, no, thank you. As much as I would love this drug or this iPhone or something that is inappropriate inside of this prison, my highest value is my freedom. No, thank you. And it's not always easy to do when you are used to getting everything you want for so long and then suddenly you are without. It requires discipline.
And like I had mentioned before, I'm sure Diddy and his defense attorney were both left stunned, knowing that he'll now have to prepare for his trial behind bars as he wasn't given bail. What can you tell us about a high profile celebrity like Diddy now having to prep for trial in a federal detention center?
I think it was the philosopher George Santayana that said, those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. So we have these high profile celebrities, Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Bankman-Fried, Robert Menendez, who was convicted at trial, tried to blame the conviction or the conduct on his sick wife. So we have those who have come before us who continue to go down this path of blaming and excusing, never identifying with victims, or at least acknowledging they could have done anything wrong. And I would say, if that's what you want to do, cool. Own it and understand the consequences that follow. So there are probably enablers, lawyers, friends, and family telling him what he wants to hear at great expense. Though if convicted, he's the one that has to serve that lengthy federal prison sentence. He's the one that will endure that pain and regret of not having made better decisions, including decisions he could make right now. What does accepting responsibility look like? Are there things within the government's version of events that I can identify with, that I can acknowledge happened? The more he can say, maybe I did this, but I didn't do that, then he can get, as I say, on the right path of accepting some sense of responsibility. But in our experience, those who have the resources, the means,
outweigh the reason for his imprisonment, something that rarely happens, especially for high-profile inmates. But his lawyers are hoping the urgency of the situation will make a difference. They're painting it as a humanitarian issue now, saying keeping him locked up any longer could destroy him completely. People around him are saying this is the lowest point of his life. Every ounce of confidence, every layer of control he once had, gone. What's left is a man trapped between his past and his reality, trying to survive a world that doesn't care who he used to be. The emotional appeal has caused a storm of reaction outside the prison walls. Some people are calling it karma, saying that for years he lived above the rules, and now the universe is finally catching up. Others are saying this is too far, that no one, no matter what they've done, deserves to mentally collapse like this behind bars. But no matter which side you're on, everyone agrees, this is a moment the world never expected to see. Experts are saying it's unlikely the appeal will result in an immediate release, but there's a chance the court could order a transfer to a mental health facility or a more secure, isolated location. But even if that happens, the damage might already be done. Insiders claim that Diddy's emotional state has deteriorated so much that even if he got out tomorrow, he'd never be the same again. He's learning the hardest lesson of all, that power doesn't protect you forever. The walls of his empire are gone, replaced by real walls he can't escape. And every day inside those walls, he's realizing that this time, no one's coming to save him. Every new day inside that cell seems to be taking a piece of him. The reports say he's barely talking to anyone, refusing to eat most meals, and even avoiding the showers because of paranoia about being attacked again. It's survival mode, stripped down to pure fear. The man who used to command rooms with confidence is now whispering to guards just to make it through another night. No matter what happens next, one thing is clear: Diddy has finally hit the wall. The emotional walls, the mental walls, the physical ones closing in on him, it's all collapsing at once. This isn't the image he ever wanted the world to see. The legend who once ruled the music industry is now a broken man begging the system for mercy. And the question now isn't just whether he'll walk free, it's whether he'll make it long enough to even see that day.